political parties in the electoral process was allowed. Public interest in participation was massive, estimated at no less than 85% of all eligible voters. Election day in the capital was very peaceful and celebratory. Voters came out in large numbers in the wee hours of the morning, making lines as long as 2 kilometers in some places. There was no indication of any violence or disturbance. The first real surprise of the day came when at 8 p.m. that evening, while thousands of voters were still on the line to vote, Prime Minister Meles Zenawi declared a state of emergency on the capital for an indefinite period of time. This declaration denied the basic constitutional right of citizens to assemble in public. He took command of the police and the armed forces during this period of emergency. Early election results showed considerable gains for opposition candidates both in urban and rural constituencies. Faced with the real prospect of being swept out of office, the ruling party declared victory. All this a day after the election and long before even half the constituency votes were counted. The ruling party claimed it has won over 300 seats in the 547-seat parliament. This was clearly against the basic rules of the National Election Board that supposedly runs the election independently. This led to spontaneous public protests and demonstrations throughout the country alleging election fraud. In an attempt to suppress protests, hundreds of peaceful protesters were shot and killed or severely wounded on June 8 and later in November. Thousands were also detained. In light of the unstable political situation like this, the CUDP made 8 specific proposals to the government as conditions for it to join Parliament. These proposals addressed a number of critical institutional and right issues, all of them explicitly written in the country's constitution. These include ensuring the independence of the election board, opening the public media to accommodate divergent views and allowing the existence of independent private electronic media, institutional independence for the judiciary, making the armed and security forces independent from partisan political interference. On November 1st, 2005, following a call for peaceful protest in support of the 8 points proposal, the government responded by arresting, jailing, and charging numerous opposition party leaders, human rights advocates, journalists, and civic society leaders for various state crimes. For nearly 21 months, these leaders were jailed in Kaliti prison while their case was being heard by a court. The international press and every international human rights group characterized the court as kangaroo court and the prisoners as prisoners of conscience. Say something about our release. As you well know, there were numerous attempts by various groups to secure our release from prison. Discussions with a group of elders to find a common ground between the government and the imprisoned CUDP leaders for negotiation on the future of democracy in our country did not bear fruit because of the belligerence of the government and the ruling party. While in prison and throughout these discussions with the elders, CUDP leaders showed their unflinching commitment to finding a peaceful and negotiated settlement to the political crisis in our country. All our calls for peaceful dialogue have unfortunately fallen on deaf ears. Even the most basic agreement we reached with the elders to secure our release was nullified and used by the government for mind-numbing propaganda to isolate CUDP from the public and to instill fear in the public so that it will refrain from supporting the party. In so doing, the government once again showed its total preoccupation in gaining temporary political advantage rather than look at the long-term interest of peace, democracy, and national reconciliation. Our release after 21 months, unfortunately, failed to bring us any closer to a more serious dialogue for national reconciliation. Mr. Chairman, democracy can and must be restored in Ethiopia. The United States and other countries can help us transition into a democratic society by helping us build democratic institutions. Among the most important democratic institutions are an independent judiciary, free media institutions, independent electoral commission, and support for indigenous non-governmental organizations. The judicial reform in Ethiopia must begin with the realization that judges must be insulated from external pressure in their duties and must decide matters before them impartially on the basis of facts and in accordance with the law without any restrictions, improper influences, inducements, pressure, threats, direct or indirect, from any quarter or for any reasons. The other issues were about free media institutions. The Committee to Protect Journalists recently ranked Ethiopia at the top of the list of countries where there is little freedom of press. People in Ethiopia, particularly in the rural areas, do not have access to important political information because of exclusive government control of the media. The public media must be open to divergent views. Political parties need to have equal access to media controlled by the government so that they can effectively communicate with the people. The electronic media should also be opened for private ownership. Say something about the Independent Electoral Commission. The lack of impartiality and transparency of the Ethiopian National Electoral Board was one of the factors that complicated the resolution of the dispute in the 2005 elections. We need an elections board that is representative of all the political parties and enjoys the public trust. Mr. Chairman, you and this committee have worked tirelessly to improve the human rights situation in Ethiopia. We in the CUDP believe that all political prisoners, including civil society leaders Netane Demse and Daniel Bekkele, must be released and their democratic rights must be restored. CUDP supports democratic reforms and accountability. We favor protections for human rights and civic society organizations and ensure adequate monitoring and reporting processes. We advocate for an independent judicial system with effective monitoring processes to protect judges from political interference. To come to the conclusion, Ethiopia has many problems, including a legacy of repression, corruption, and mismanagement. It will not be easy for all of us to confront the past. We must try by embracing the rule of law, respect for human rights and democracy. The time is ripe for democratization in Ethiopia. The U.S. can help by using its considerable influence to encourage the government to negotiate with the opposition. Only through dialogue and negotiation will stability and peace be guaranteed. As a long-time friend of Ethiopia, I know you will stand by Ethiopia and Ethiopians in these difficult times. Thank you.
Thank you very much.